Dr. Omer, Advanced Neurospinal Solutions, and today we're discussing Meniere's disease. Meniere's disease is an issue with balance, usually, highly misdiagnosed. Very often you'll get the diagnosis of Meniere's disease, and it won't apply because in order to have Meniere's, you lose both hearing and balance on one side. And they have to go together, and we're going to explain why in just a second here. But they go together, and so if you didn't lose hearing but you lost balance, that's not Meniere's. If you lost hearing but not balance, it's not Meniere's. You lose both, and it's profound, and it's on one side. It affects hearing on that side, and it affects balance on that side. It also affects the tone of the muscles in your body on that side profoundly, because you lose both systems. Now, I've drawn up here that the chamber, the part that has a problem in Meniere's disease is called the labyrinth, and it's up on each side. You have the semicircular canals, and they feel rotation of your head in multiple planes. But then underneath it, you have the utricle and saccule, we call it the otolith, and it feels translational movement, forward, back, side, up, down, diagonals, all the translational movement. That's the vestibular or the balance part of the system. Then attached to it is the cochlea, which is the hearing part of the system. And they are separated by a membrane in between called Reiser's membrane. And the fluid on the vestibular side of the membrane is sodium rich. It maintains that gradient to have mostly sodium. Why? Because that's what makes it fire more easily. And so it has to have that in order for it to work. On the cochlear side, or the hearing side, we have what's called the organ of Corti, and that's where the little hair cells translate. We're translating sound waves that come into your ear, vibrate the eardrum tympanic. I'm translating this from humanese, from doctorese to humanese, and then as it vibrates the three little bones in your ear, and then it pounds that same frequency, that air frequency to bone frequency, to now water frequency, fluid frequency, which is highly rich in potassium. It goes to the little hair cells and matches with the different frequencies, and you're getting all those frequencies that are related to what you just heard. They're all resonating and turning on the nerve, the cochlear nerve, which goes down to your brainstem. And when it gets to the brainstem, it starts to, I forgot to say the part where the water frequency is translated into an electrical impulse that goes into the brainstem, and then it goes up to the top of the brainstem and then over into the temporal lobes, and you hear with your temporal lobes and that. So, but when Reiser's membrane breaks, the fluid from both sides diffuse in the opposite direction. So the sodium goes towards the potassium goes to the sodium, and that's why immediately you lose both systems. You lose all of the ability to balance on that side, and all of the ability to hear is gone. It's instantly gone. Now with Reiser's, that membrane often reforms. It's a regular occurrence that membrane reforms, and then the body is able to restore that gradient of high sodium on the vestibular side and high potassium on the other side. The unique thing about the potassium is the reason the nerves love the sodium is, and that's how it operates throughout the entire body except for this system, is that sodium makes the nerve want to fire. It makes it more sensitive to fire. Whereas potassium is the opposite. It causes the nerve not to want to fire. But the physiology is such that it works in this case. And so it wants to not fire. We call it hyperpolarizes, which means it's it's not only not going to fire, but it's going to be less likely to fire in the future. It's going to take a lot more energy to get it to do its job. Well, we lose both of those gradients, and all of a sudden we lose it, but then the membrane reforms and it comes back up. Now why doesn't it come up to where it was before? It can't. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? And that's the case. Because the peripheral nerves haven't been firing, they downregulate. They decrease in their efficiency, they decrease in their number of mitochondria because they're not doing anything, so they're backing everything out. They're becoming weaker and weaker. And then those nerves fire into the central nervous system, go up to the top of the brainstem, which affects your ability to know the room, right? That you look at the room and you can close your eyes and you can still know what's in the room, and you can walk around it without hitting the chair, right? Because you know where the chair is because you've got this grid. Well, you also have a hearing portion of that because you're hearing the sounds not only directly, but you're hearing my voice bounce off the walls and it gives you that three-dimensional texture of your world around you. Then it goes from there, that hearing portion goes up into both temporal lobes. 60% of it goes to the opposite side, 40% to the same side, and it gives you that three-dimensionality of hearing, where if you have your eyes closed and you've got a car, you can tell it's coming from the right, and then you can tell when it's in front of you, and then you can tell when it leaves, right? And that's that system. Well, in the vestibular portion that we lose, it decreases the activity, eliminates the activity of the superior and inferior vestibular nerve, which becomes the vestibular nerve, and then links up with the cochlear nerve and goes into the brainstem, and we call it cranial nerve 8. But when we don't have that impulse, the peripheral nerves dial down, they dial back. And so we start to lose the efficiency of those peripheral nerves, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Then it also goes up to the right side of the cortex, because everything's on the left is about speech. The right side of the cortex is going to give you that sense of balance from a cortical point of view, and that feeling of balance. Balance is really a reflex, but then you have a cortical part of it that not only gives you the feeling of it, but the ability to voluntarily modify it whenever you want. And so that you lose that area. We call it the PIVC, which we're going to talk about even more in the future. But that PIVC is in the bottom front of the cortex, and we call it the vestibular cortex. And because you're not using it, you lose it, it atrophies. We can literally measure it when we look at an MRI, especially an fMRI. We can actually do measurements and show its diminishment. Atrophy means no nutrition. No nutrition because it's not functioning. And so those are all the things that are happening in Meniere's disease. Hopefully that makes things more clear. For me, it's vital because, like I say in here over and over again, the closer you get to the truth, the simpler the solution. And that's what we're about here at Advanced Neurospinal Solutions. We're about the solution. We treat the why, not the what. We want the why to go away. And when the why goes away, the what goes away. So, hopefully that gives you clarity on it. And remember, we're here if you're ready to take your life back.